Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome everyone to the October 17th special board meeting. We do have a one-item agenda, so I would ask is there a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
So moved.
So moved by Don Moran.
Second.
Second by Sadie Liller. All those in favor of the agenda presented for this meeting presented to us, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. And it is unanimous. We do have one item, and that's the reconsideration of our CIP. So I ask Mr. Weslovsky to make that presentation.
Yes, I'm here this evening to request approval for Garrett County Public Schools 2025 to 2030 proposed capital improvement plan.
All right.
Superintendent, do you have a recommendation?
As superintendent, I recommend approval of the 2025 to 2030 capital improvement plan.
The superintendent has recommended that we approve the CIP 2025 to FY25 to FY30. Is there a motion as such?
I'll move we approve the CIP plan.
Move to approve by Rodney Gotfelty.
Second.
Second by Don Moran. Would now ask Mr. Weslovsky, would you like to make any comments or any additions to it before we start asking questions? And certainly I would say to anyone who has a question as he goes through that, please raise your hand and ask that question.
As we look at FY25, the bulk of our request for the IAC is going to be for the balance of the funding for our Southern Elementary project. And also as part of the superintendent's initiative, looking at the grade band alignment in the north, we also want to do some pre-planning and design money for the possibility of regrade banding the north. So those are the kind of high level things that we'll work with the IAC to get done this year. And then as we go out into subsequent years, as it's laid out, looking at the possibility of those renovations and some other projects at Route 40, and then ultimately a longer term plan to then take care of our schools as we go forward with some of our other schools, as in Crellin and Friendsville. So it's laid out there as to 5 years for approval.
And I would add, as we said last month at the meeting and previous, that we have included both the possibility of the work at Northern High, Northern Middle, and also the work at Accident. And as we revise this on a yearly basis, so as we make a final decision as to what we do on the north, the plan will be revised to reflect those decisions.
Questions?
Wait a minute.
Go ahead, Rodney.
So on fiscal year 25, you had 49,089,838 for that. That was for the Southern Middle School product for renovations. And then fiscal year 26, you still have that same number in there. But some of it's going to be spent in 25 and some 26. Is that, we just don't know how much.
Right now, FY26 is about 14.5 million, Rodney.
Well, okay. But
yeah, I see what you're saying.
I mean, I'll just explain it to me.
Yep. Okay.
So part of that 49 will be spent in 25 and part of it in 26.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right.
But that was a good question to ask, Rodney. Thank you.
And then just to clarify, you have accident roof replacement in there, but that could change, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, Healthy Schools applications are due in May.
Right.
So we'll as the initiative possibly unfolds, then we'll have some time to submit that or not, depending on the decision.
Rich, can you recall offhand how much money was spent from, was it 14.3 million that the commissioners gave us for the southern renovation and the southern middle school renovation type thing, and then redoing Broadford? As I
So it was
recall, it's like
14.
14.3.
Yeah, and then it was reduced by the 350,000, Tom, for the Southern High
Right.
field house. So
So
we're
we're
at,
about $14 million.
yeah, that's where we are, pretty much right on the money. Yeah.
Okay, so from that, can you recall how much has been spent at Southern High School of that 14 million?
Okay, so our share at Southern High School, let me do this off, air conditioning. We spent about 3 million, about 4 million of that at the high school. Less than
Okay.
that, 3.5 million, but at the high school. I don't have
Yes, sure.
11%.
So we're down to about 10 million then, a little, maybe.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm getting to is the 8.5. We're good with the 8.5 in terms of that much money will be left. And if there is theoretically perhaps $1 million left, have we had a discussion with commissioners that would they allow us to use that money at another school in the county? Because the initial conversation was with commissioners, we could keep the money as long, but it was sort of the caveat that you use it, those two things they
Yep.
approved. But
Mhm.
if there's money left over, I think we need to have a conversation with the commissioners to allow us to use that money for some of the other school needs that we're going to have.
Right, and we have, as you know, we have the and some roof replacements. So for that,
Rich, I can't hear you. I'm not sure if everybody else can or not.
can you hear me? Yeah, Tom, we have first of all, the $8.5 million is like a placeholder. When I
Mhm.
talked to you when we did the contract, there's some contingency money in there
Mhm.
so we probably are not going to spend the entire, we have obviously our share for the project, but that also carries any contingencies and just different things that could pop up that we control. So that's kind of a high placeholder, as I would say, about the 8.5 million. But yes, we've had conversations, the Northern High and Southern High roofs. Right now, that's about 725,000. So all this is within the 14 million.
Mhm.
And then, with his conversations with them, Tom, I think as long as we can do what we can do with this 14 million to support
Right.
anything with the CIP.
And that's what I understand also, Tom, as I've talked to Kevin. They've sort of earmarked this 14 million. Certainly we need to work with them as we expend those funds. But so far we've had great support from them in that regard.
Yes.
Looking where we are now and looking forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great to know because certainly they've been very generous in giving us the money, first of all. Secondly, that money could really be used for some of these things that we're looking at doing at both ends of the county. It'd be great
Yes.
to be able to use that money.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and knowing that we're at a good split with the state right now is also very helpful for us.
Well, ideally,
You're right.
ideally the commissioners would fund all these requests on the right side. But they might not. But the idea, I think, was to take that 14 million and do the local share out of some of it. Is that right? Is that your
Yes.
understanding?
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. And Rodney, we're also in good shape. If you look at our maintenance plan, all of our schools, and the state was only, our state visitors this week, we're only in 2 schools. But the quality of our buildings and the work that this school system and school board has done over the years to maintain those buildings is just exemplary. And all of our buildings are in good to very good shape. So the continued maintenance part of it is to be expected as a part of the schools.
Yeah. It's a great job, maintenance staff do that.
Rich, where are we with, have we completed the feasibility studies for Krellin? And if so, what did that show?
We did we did a limited feasibility study. We just picked some of the components and looked at the spaces. We didn't do a full-blown study as we were required by the IAC. But where right now it landed, Tom, is that there's going to be some decisions that have to be made based on, can you do enough renovations there? Should you rebuild it? So what report was done just kind of offered up some possibilities, but we really did not do a complete feasibility study to say, can it be done on that property? Do we have to buy another piece of property? We'll have to move forward with doing a lot more comprehensive as decisions are made as we go forward. But as you know, we don't have enough space there in terms of programs. So the way the state looks at it, when you're doing limited like renovations like we did at Southern High and Grantsville, you're staying within the footprint of the building. When you start asking for additional square footage, additions to buildings, that's when the funding kind of changes a little bit. They start to look at your other empty seats in the school system. So there'll be some big conversations. We're going to start next week with the IAC to kind of see how that unfolds. Limited renovations like Grantsville or possibly at Friendsville, they're on board with that because those are in the grand scheme of things less expensive or not require that much funding in their grand scheme of things. But when you start talking about additional spaces and all those things, it's a pretty big comprehensive conversation as we go forward.
Would it be possible for you to share those ideas with us at the November board meeting?
I'm sorry, Tom. Ask that again, please.
I was asking, would it be possible for you guys to share with us the ideas, the findings from Krellin at the November board meeting so that we can at least get some idea what we're up against?
The last I saw them, they were in draft, but if we'll look at that, and if they've been finalized, I was waiting for the finalization of those to be able to share with you. But certainly, we will do that.
Yep, not a problem.
But the point is, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, fiscal 26, you do have the money in there to do the full feasibility study for Krellin, right?
Right.
Yeah.
For both Krellin and Friendsville. Yes.
But that won't come till next year.
Right.
26.
Correct. Yes, and when looking at the draft report, and the last I saw, as I said, they had not been finalized, but looking at those draft reports, there wasn't a lot of information overall. So Rich was going back to them and having some more work done. Hopefully that'll be completed, and we'll get that to the board as soon as it is.
Yeah. Other questions?
Our target, Tom, will be the November board meeting.
Okay, that'd be great if we could at least get some idea where we're headed there.
Sure.
Other questions, board members?
Yeah, Tom, sorry, I have my hand up. You may not be able
Yeah, I
to
see it there now, Jason.
Sorry, just a few questions. I'm going to go kind of line by line here, starting at the top. Have we already received IAC approval for the limited renovations for Northern High School and Northern Middle School?
No.
Okay. And then working down through the list, Rich, I'm assuming then for 2026, we will have larger conversations with the IAC as far as the expenditures for both Northern Middle and Northern High also, correct?
We will get the school system will get notification in May for that planning money. And then in October, so you do your planning from that May through October. The October submission would then put in for the actual funding number. And they let you know in January for the funding for Northern High, Northern Middle.
Thanks. And then moving on to Route 40, first, the solar and electrification. That is grant funded, correct? That 3.2 million?
Correct. And it's also no match.
No match on our side. So it's not really to be determined. That should be zero, correct, in those columns for our cost.
Yeah.
Good point.
And then
And
looking at the Route
we're
40.
I'm sorry, but we're hoping in December to be able to bring more information to the board on the possible project at Route 40. We're still doing a lot of groundwork on trying to pull all the pieces of that together.
And then I see that also grant funding for the Route 40 roof replacement as far as the Healthy Schools Fund will cover most of those costs for the roof.
Yes. Yeah.
And then moving on to the education specification and feasibility study for both Friendsville and Crellin that's scheduled for 2026. That will be part of applying for the funding from the IAC for those studies as well.
Yeah. I think doing the study side by side.
You're muted. You're muted. Rich, you're muted.
I don't think so. Maybe. Did we mute?
Rich, I think you're
I
muted.
can't hear him either.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, we're not muted.
Can you hear us?
Now
I
I can
can-
hear you.
Okay. Yeah, Jason, that we would request for those for planning and feasibility study money and do them side by side at the same time.
And then it looks like we are projecting for something to come out of that study, since in 2027 we have A&E funding set aside
Yeah.
for both Crellin and Friendsville.
Yeah, there'll have to be a decision on which one to go forward with based on what the studies produce and where we are with enrollment and any other things that would happen between now and then, because I don't see a scenario where the county could afford to do both at the same time in terms of the if it would come about to do, whether it's renovation, limited renovation, rebuild, whatever that study lands on.
And what do you think the chances of the IAC even approving funding for both schools, even if we don't look at the local match, looking at population of our schools?
Well, Friendsville, because it's a limited renovation, because we've done limited renovations, and they look at our underutilization, like even at Grantsville in Southern High, when we're underutilized, but they look at, you're staying within the walls, and it's that kind of that less money that's that. But when you bring in new construction or additions, they look at your adjacent schools. And like we had, when the IAC visited about 4 years ago, I had to get a waiver from the IAC. If you remember back to this, if you were here, Tom, when we did that strategic planning, and remember there was conversations about taking kids from Broadford and moving them to Accident.
Yes.
Remember, and trying to do that. So I had to get a waiver for adjacent schools saying, and they came in, they visited and we drove it, and they realized that it wasn't reasonable for kids to go from the Broadford zone to Accident. So we would have to do the same thing. If we have empty seats in another building, we're going to have to bring them up here and ask for a waiver and present a case why those students shouldn't attend that building. And that's probably going to be an obstacle if we get into a new build or some major kind of additions working with the IAC.
And remind me what our capacity is at once the new school is complete.
Right now, on paper, we're looking at 825.
And how many students do we anticipate will be in that school after renovation is complete?
Right now, enrollment is just over 600.
But what that doesn't include, Mr. Van Sickle, is the space in the school because the IAC has not quite caught up with MSDE, but we expect that they will soon. It does not include the space in the school where we have the Head Start as a part of the school, as they're providing preschool programs, nor does it include the space that is needed for the community school support. So those are things that we'll just continue to work through.
And sorry, just one final question. As we look through, and of course, we haven't passed budget for some of the years here that we're looking at. Has there been any thought to, if these projects either aren't approved by the IAC or the approval to move accident does not go through, what will happen with those funds at that time, or where will they be dedicated?
Reevaluate, reprioritize,
Yes.
and kind of move forward from that, you know.
Great. Thanks, Tom. That's all I have.
Other questions?
I
Okay,
just
here-
have one more, Tom,
Go ahead.
briefly. When we were down looking at Route 40 a number of years ago, it looked like that retaining wall needed work done. Have we accounted for that in this CIP, or you don't think it's necessary? You know what retaining wall I'm talking about?
Yeah, Rodney, it got fixed.
Oh, did it?
It's
Okay.
done.
Well, that's
Yep.
good to know.
Yeah, it was about 20,000 out of our operating budget.
Okay, great. Wonderful.
Other questions? Anyone? Okay, hearing no further questions, there is a motion on the floor and a second to adopt the CIP for FY 25 through FY 30. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Heard one aye,
Aye.
two ayes,
Aye.
three ayes. All those opposed, nay?
Nay.
One nay. The CIP is this passed on a 3-1 vote. And that is all that we are scheduled to do. So with that being said, I'll thank everyone. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved by
Second.
Jason,
Second.
second by Rodney. All those in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
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 And
Aye.
those opposed, nay. And we are adjourned.